Content on this production is for entertainment and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, nor is it intended to substitute medical treatment or diagnosis. Seek medical help if you believe that you are suffering from a mental illness or are a threat to yourself or others. By using any or all of the information provided, you do so at your own risk. Any application of the material is at the listener's discretion and is his or her sole responsibility.
Hey everybody, Doc Brian here. As many of you may already know, October is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. Now, if you've listened to my podcast for any period of time, you'll know that my brother-in-law committed suicide. And awareness and prevention is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And maybe you're listening today and you would say, Doc Brian, I want to give up. And I want to tell you I've been there. I know what that feels like. But I also want to tell you that there's hope. So hold on. You can make it through another day. If you feel like you may have come to the end of your rope, reach out to someone, because there is somebody who's willing to listen. Hey everybody, Doc Brian here, and welcome to Doc Talks, where we talk about people's troubles, trials, tribulations, and hopefully triumphs in life. Today with me on the show, I have Dr. Daniel Emina and Rick Lawrence. Dr. Emina is the associate medical director of Emina Clinics, and Rick Lawrence. I'll get all this right in a minute. Rick Lawrence is the executive director of Vibrant. How do you say that? I wrote it, and now I can't read my own writing.
Ministries.
Vibrant Faith Ministries. Okay. So, Rick, since I absolutely butchered what you do, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, for 3 decades, I was on the executive leadership team at Group, and I oversaw the youth ministry and adult ministry resourcing, training, and equipping. And in the middle of the pandemic, I transitioned and become the executive director of Vibrant Faith, which is also a ministry training, resourcing, and coaching organization. But we also do, in partnership with the Lilly Endowment, we do major research within the church, helping the church to plant and experiment with new approaches to ministry that we then gauge the impact of those in our major research projects. So that's what I do now. And on the side, or it sometimes seems like more than the side, I write books, mostly, almost exclusively about Jesus from 5,000 different trajectories.
Wow. And Dr. Emina, you are a psychiatrist, is that correct?
Yeah, I am. So again, Doc Brian, thanks for having us on. This
Absolutely.
Is great to be on. I appreciate the work you do, the message that you deliver, and especially speaking on hope, because our book is really a lot about hope. But yeah, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm also a general and an adult psychiatrist. So I'm double board certified in both, trained at UCLA, University of Hawaii. I've been at the Emina Clinics now for 8 or so years. I'm one of the associate medical directors there. And we at the Emina Clinics, we see mental health more as brain health. So that informs my perspective on this book and even on the care I provide for my clients. We're thinking about how do we improve brain health? One, because that drops the stigma element of it. We all want to be healthier. Well, start with your brain. Get your brain healthier. When your brain's healthier, you tend to make better decisions, manage the stressors of life better. Doesn't fix all of life, but it gives you that extra bit of oomph or resilience to get through many of the things that we face.
Sure. And you mentioned stigma. Would you say that the stigma is kind of letting up a little bit within the last 4 or 5 years, or do you think it's still as prevalent as it ever was?
Oh, it's an ongoing battle and an ongoing fight. I think, so one, it's becoming more readily discussed. And there's celebrities and such and people out there in the public and the media that do say, hey, I had these mental health related struggles. And it does allow, especially for the newer generation, to actually speak on this to each other. And it's not something that's hidden in the background completely. But it's still an ongoing thing, right? There's still the back and the forth of it. I mean, there are people who will still roll their eyes when someone says, I'm having my mental health struggles or whatever it may be, when someone's open with it. So we're not there yet, but it is becoming more readily discussed. And even in the discussion, it does not mean that it's always discussed with as much wisdom, as much empathy, as much knowledge as it maybe should be. But nevertheless, we're happy about the discussion. And I think even, one of the primary things we talk about is feeling empowered to live a life intentionally that actually moves you towards health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I think that really is where the eventual message goes to, right? Instead of just being focused on the disease of whatever mental health related diagnosis someone may have.
Sure.
Yeah, there's actually a thread through the book that even is born out of Daniel's clinical experience treating Christian clients, because there's a lot of baggage Christians carry with them around brain health, mental health issues. And I frame it in this light. It's a kind of casual, relaxed Gnosticism, in the sense that the Gnostic heresy was that all things spiritual are good and all things material are evil. So they even explain away the humanness of Jesus in that heresy. We, in our contemporary Christian world, would never think of ourselves as Gnostics, and yet we discount the material side of our life and the humanness of Jesus even, and say that only the spiritual is really worthy or true. So when you're having a struggle, it means you need more faith, a spiritual solution. And in our book, we accurately, I think, reflect the wholeness of Jesus, and that he's both material and spiritual, and that there are many, many ways to build up a bulwark against depression and anxiety through both the biological and the spiritual, both sides working together.
Sure. There's a Christian comedian who she lost her husband through alcoholism. And when she went back on the road, her very opening line was, "Tonight's concert is being brought to you by 150 milligrams of Effexor and a milligram of Xanax." And people laughed and responded to that. But she said she didn't lost count of how many people told her how inappropriate that was for her to speak about her mental health in that way. And the biggest comeback that she had was, if she just had enough faith that God would take care of all of it. Now, Dr. Emina, you mentioned brain health, and I think that where we get messed up is that there is a difference between faith and brain chemistry. Could you kind of speak to how those work together, but how they are also different?
Yeah, let me start with just a basic thing. Let's say someone broke their leg, like you literally broke their leg. You can even see kind of bone coming through, it's kind of an awful picture to have, but they broke their leg. I think for most of us, we wouldn't expect them to, by faith, run a mile now, right? You would say, no, you clearly broke your leg. Let's take you to the ER. Let's get that bone set. You're going to need some physical therapy, whatever it is, depending on the level of the injury, right? We would recognize that in many ways is a biological thing, and it's not just purely about your fate. Your fate may influence how you go about the process, how you see, hey, God help this process to go well with the doctor, that they do a good job, that they set the bone right, that it heals appropriately. Your fate will still influence your progress through the healing process of that bone break. But the biological frailty that allowed for the bone break is still a thing. It was real, right? And that still needs to be healed, and that needs to be taken care of. The thing we don't think of in relation to brain-related conditions and things that we label as mental health-related conditions is that our brains in some ways can break too, okay? The issue is that we often can't see it, so it's nebulous, and that's why it can become stigmatized. You can see the person, they can technically look fine, there's no bone coming out of anything, right? But they're having a particular set of struggles. So then it becomes a character-related deficits. It becomes faith-related deficits, not a medical-related condition. Yeah, you wouldn't say to the person who had the broken bone, your faith is probably just, it's not there. I think you need to pray a little bit more, read a little bit more. Have you considered prayer and fasting? We wouldn't go to those elements. We would say, hey, you got a medical thing, and let's take care of that. We can pray along the way that the healing goes well, that it's not as bad, all the things, but we still need to honor that your body needs treatment. The issues, especially in the church, and even not even just the church, even secular communities, we think of this brain as, and we don't think of it as a medical thing. We don't think of it of the biology of it. We think of it as just like a floating spirit in there in some ways. But we know that if you have a concussion, you have a 3 times higher risk of suicide, right, than just the general population. And we know that if you hit your brain, that creates damage to the brain. It can negatively impact the function of the brain, and it can negatively impact how you process your reality. But we're also not only hitting your head, but the substances that we get exposed to. So not just illicit substances, but even the toxins in our environment, in our water. If you live in some communities, right, where you're not getting healthy, good water, in our paints, in our foods, there's so many things that can create toxins that and that can negatively impact the function of our brain. That's just on the biological side. One of the things we talk about in the book is that the other toxins that we may have are almost software toxins. They're psychology toxins, things that are planted in us in the context of our upbringing and our experiences, and they become part of these things we call destructive narratives in the book.
Yeah. And so this book you're referring to is Suicide Solution. Rick, could you tell us kind of where this idea was birthed for this book?
Sure. So I live in a Denver suburb in one of the highest sort of geographical regions for suicide in the country. So I've had a lot of connection along the way because I have 2 daughters growing up through the school system. I've had a lot of connection to suicide in my neighborhood and in my kids' circles. And so I've been exposed to a lot of the messaging around anxiety, depression, and suicide. And I always have felt an unrest with the conversation that develops around this. It's almost always reactive, and the solutions that are given don't have anything to do with prevention, really, in my view, of building up some a bulwark in people's lives against this downward slide. So it just felt a lot of unrest. And so I decided I'm an author. And I write about Jesus. So I decided to explore the overlap of who Jesus is, how he modeled living and what he taught, overlay that with the anxiety, depression, and suicide problem in America. And I wrote a book proposal, and my agent at one point said, "This is really not going to go anywhere, Rick. Because you need a partner. You need a skilled, expert partner to write this with." And he was right. And so the proposal lay dormant for about a year, and then out of the blue, he called me and said, I just had a publisher approach me about partnering with a psychiatrist named Dr. Daniel Emina. How about if you two meet? So Daniel and I met over the phone to see if we had a kindred connection and also perspective on all this, and we discovered we did. But we were coming at it from 2 different trajectories. So the whole process of writing this book was a learning experience, I'd say, for both of us. We were learning from each other, and as we learned from each other, the threads of our perspectives and experiences came together in the message of this book. So Daniel has his own journey to getting to this place where he was asked to write this as a co-author as well. Maybe Daniel, you could give that story too.
I love how things just work out. I don't think of this as like just a serendipity thing. I think this is a God thing, because there were just too many different elements that came together. I guarantee you, if the things that happened prior to the actual invitation for the book and everything that hadn't happened, I would have said no to the opportunity to write, to work with Rick on this. Because the short story is, my mom is always in constant education, which is actually a good thing for the brain, side note. So she's always educating herself. She was like, I think she wanted to do like a master's program. So she's getting this master's program, and it's in the context of church. And there was a project on suicide in the church. and I'm a psychiatrist, so she's having conversations with me about it. She even asked me to do a little presentation about it. So I'm doing all this prep work. I'm doing some research stuff. So I have this backlog of data and things in relation to it. And that was like for like a year. And then this book thing comes up and I'm like, okay, I mean, I already have all this repository of things I've been considering. I actually did a presentation on this. This is my job to, you try to prevent this, right? My job is to, I think of it as like helping people understand their brains, live into their brains, and thrive with a better understanding how their brain runs. And in the context of that, the natural progression of that is that it prevents suicide. So it's a more proactive strategy than just saying, oh, we want to prevent this thing. It's really about how you live, right? So by the time it came up, I was like, well, yeah, this is almost like a perfect, it was hard to kind of ignore how God put it all together. And then Rick was just awesome. Even after our first conversation, it was just like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And this was great. And he made this whole process so easy. I always joke with him that if I decide to write the book myself, like I would literally still be writing. I'll be talking to my friends about it. I'm still writing my book. I'm on chapter 3 or something. He's amazing.
So you both have used the term suicide prevention. What exactly does that mean?
Let me throw something out, and then Daniel, you can jump on this. So Daniel just said that he just enunciated the title of the book that he wished we had been able to call it. We got kind of overruled. Daniel's title of the book would have been A Way to Live. And I think that is a fantastic way of describing what this book is about. It's not a way to prevent death or destruction. It's a way to live that was modeled by Jesus and confirmed by all of the science that we know, the emerging science around anxiety and depression. Turns out that the way Jesus taught and modeled is backed up and reflected by the best science that we know around both what Daniel and I call the software and hardware of our humanness. The hardware is our biology, the software is our soul or our psychology. The two have to work together. You have to eradicate bugs from both of them, or the computer will not operate well and even sometimes stop operating. So that's the perspective that we use to put in front of people a menu of possibilities for ways of living their life. It's a very comprehensive menu. We're not expecting that people follow every of the practical suggestions that are in the last 2/3 of the book. We're expecting them to treat it like a menu and pick the things that they can incorporate into their life that affect both their biology and their psychology as a regular way of living their life. And it turns out when you do those things, you're also following Jesus and living more like he did when you do these things. So our approach is to build up this menu of possibilities for a way to live your life that we know once you start stacking these habits in your life, it builds a refuge against what is a natural magnetic pull on all human beings toward anxiety and depression. That's why we have an epidemic in the United States right now, because it's a natural magnetic pull towards anxiety and depression for everyone in our culture. So how do you live your life in such a way that it works against that downward slide?
So in prevention here, what you are speaking of is how to keep your life in an area of where you're not digressing into the natural state of depression, anxiety that would then lead into suicidal ideologies.
Yeah, and maybe Daniel, you could explain the 3 C's as a way of describing what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll get to the C's. I love this because I think it just kind of simplifies it a bit, but I'll use some different other kind of examples. It's like, there would be particular ways of, if you were trying to create strategies to become physically healthier, right? It's not waiting till you're unhealthy and then saying, or just don't eat these foods. It would be more about eat these foods, have this level of activity, have this level of sleep, do these particular things, and then that moves you towards health, right? Versus more of a focus on don't eat this, don't do that. Yes, you can discuss that if your long-term goal is like a physical health, but yeah, it's more about what positive things can we move towards? What life building things can we move towards? And that's kind of how we frame it in the book. It's like, what life giving things can you move towards? First, you also have to understand where you're starting from. So there's an element of kind of understanding where you're starting from, where you are biologically already, and where you are in your internal narratives already. Knowing how you speak to yourself about yourself, because we have a tendency to live into those things, right? So being able to have those basic understandings does lead up to one of the things we like to talk about it, and actually 4 C's. I keep adding more to them. I think there might be even like 5 or more. I keep thinking, is there other ways I could put this together? But the first one is just being creative. What do you create? And creating isn't just about art or like painting. It can be that, but it can also be in what you do in your community, in what you do in your work. Even literally, as we're doing this podcast, this is part of your creation, right? This is something you create that benefits others, right? So what are you creating? What are you using that intellect for? The other piece is how you're connecting. We all need to connect. Even for our introverts, we need to connect, right? The introverts initially started out the pandemic. They were like, I was built for this. I'm good. I'm fine. And then after a while, even they started having issues, right? Initially, their anxiety dropped, and then it kind of came back up because they grew too away from people. It was just too isolated. Obviously, for the extroverts, they struggle from day one, right? It was like, I need people, I need to connect, right? So connection is important. Good quality connection, however it may be, but good quality connection, especially with people that align with your goals and align with your vision. Contribution, how are you contributing to others? How are you supporting others? What are you doing in your community? What are you doing even in your work, in your home, in your church, however it may be, right? And it can look like having a nice smile for the person who's checking you out at a grocery store, to all the way being someone cuts you off, choosing to have grace for them, for wherever they might be in their brain health in that moment, versus carrying that frustration. There's something that it does for them. You're not honking. You're not yelling at them. And there's something it does for you because you're not carrying that unnecessary angst and aggression and increased cortisol because you're frustrated in them. And then the last one is cultivation. So this is the bigger one. It's you're cultivating this strategy of health. How do I think? Am I thinking in ways that are beneficial to me? Am I thinking in ways that match up with my goals and my ideals and my vision for self in some ways? Is it healthy the way I'm thinking? And then not only that, it's also, am I sleeping enough? Am I exercising enough? Am I eating well enough? Do I have the right supplements? Something random. Am I treating my sleep apnea if I have sleep apnea? Or my high blood pressure? Yes, those all impact how your brain works. Did I have some concussions? Have I done anything about that? Have I evaluated it? Have I read a line about different ways to help my brain heal? So this kind of comes together to form those 4 C's, right? Are you creating? Are you connecting? Are you contributing? And are you cultivating wellness?
I love that. Absolutely love that. And I've said this before, but I'm not a psychiatrist, and that MD behind your name means a whole lot. But can you just dispel this rumor that I've tried to dispel for years, is that talking about suicide with your friends, your family, your kids does not make it a greater chance for them to consider it as an option?
Yeah, one of the greatest tragedies is often when people say, we didn't see this coming. Okay, we thought he was okay. We thought she was okay. We thought that we didn't see this coming. That's just painful to hear, right? Because think how alone that individual was, right? How alone they must have been to be having these thoughts coming over and over into their mind, eventually leading to an action, and they couldn't share with anybody. They've actually done studies on this that increased discussion about it doesn't automatically lead to someone going and trying to kill themselves, right? If someone was going to try to kill themselves, in the context of a discussion, they'd probably already had premeditated thoughts about it. They'd already been kind of going, and there might have been other conditions or other issues with substances or personality disorders or other things that may have contributed to it. But really having the open discussion about it, even before anything's going on, actually allows people to have more discussion about this. I literally just had a patient who had read the book and had seen him. His twin brother had taken his life. His dad had his dad had taken his life also. So he's had two people in his life that had taken their life. So obviously suicide is a big thing for him. But he's a teacher, and there was a avenue that he was able to share of his story. And it actually allowed one of the teens, it wasn't even immediately, and the teen to approach him later on to kind of talk about where that teen had been in their own journey. And that couldn't have happened if he hadn't been willing to share. That teen wasn't sharing with anybody else. And being able to share with somebody else and say, this is where I'm at, and wait, that's how you overcame it, or this is how you manage it. I don't have to act on those thoughts just because they come through my mind. That teen needed someone to be able to talk to about that. So it's necessary to have these discussions. It should be part of what we talk about in school, but also in church. We don't have to only put it on the psychiatrist or those in mental health care to have these discussions.
Can I throw in a quick biblical example here?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So we know the story of the woman who had an issue of blood. So a lifelong medical issue. She had emptied her savings trying to get medical attention for it, and it was still there. Jesus is on his way to heal Jairus' daughter who's dying. He cannot stop if he's going to get there before she dies. And the woman comes up in a crowded square and touches the hem of his garment and then slinks back into the crowd, and Jesus stops. He should not have done this because he stops, Jairus' daughter dies. That's the brutal truth of this. And everyone around, including Jairus, are shocked that he is stopping in the middle of this square. Why is Jesus doing something that is so costly in that moment to stop? She's already had her healing. She's already completely well again. Why not keep walking? He doesn't keep walking for the very same reason that Daniel's describing here. He asks, who touched me? Power's gone out of me. Who touched me? Eventually, the woman says, it was me. Everyone knows her, but no one's in relationship with her because she is divorced of her connections of people because of the condition she has. So everyone knows her. And she says, Jesus just healed me. And Jesus asks her to out herself in the public square, not just because of her physical healing, but because of her psychological healing. He's really saying to the crowd, she's well now, and connection with her is not only possible, but I'm encouraging it now. Mm-hmm. She needs healing psychologically and socially as well. And instead of burying her story in the darkness, he highlights her story in the light so that she can find a path to reconnection in her culture.
Yeah, I have counseled with many people who have attempted suicide, and one is too many. But the reoccurring theme that I hear is not that they wanted to die. But it was the only way that they knew that would completely change their circumstance. And so in your book, talking about the things that we do to keep ourselves healthy, to keep our brains healthy, what happens when we get to the point of we just give up? What direction do we go there?
So good question. I'll say a little bit on this, and I know Rick got some thoughts on this too. I think of it like if someone's having a heart attack, like, and you're already at chest pain point, like you're like, oh, it's going to my arm, it's our chest pain. You're probably not going to start reading a book on diet at that time, right? You're not going to say, oh, I probably should go on you're going to the ER. So if you're really ever at that point where the thoughts are so real, you're planning it, you got a plan, you want to do something, you're thinking about doing something, it's to that level, get help. It's the ER level, get help. Call whoever doctor, your primary care doctor, even if it's 911, if you have a family member in that level, take them to the ER, let them be evaluated immediately, because that's basically at the heart attack level. Before that though, if you've already started to get a little bit of discomfort in the chest, You're walking up the stairs. I'm feeling nauseous. That's when you're doing this process of going, okay, I got to get myself healthier physically. So I'm protecting my heart. But it also relates to this. If those thoughts do flash up in the mind, where you're getting so much more distressed by the things that are happening in your life, you've known about the trauma, you've known about the family situations, you know that your alcohol intake has started to go up, you're starting to have those thoughts, oh, it could just be easier, just be done with this. I'm just tired of it all. Those thoughts are starting to build. That's when you start this process of digging into how do I get myself healthier? That's not the only answer. There are other answers. This book is literally about the idea of other answers of hope, right? Whatever solution that, I mean, Dr. Amen, who wrote that forward to this book, often talks about the idea of like suicide being a permanent solution to whatever that temporary issue or temporary problem is. Now, the truth of it is some people can have long-standing challenges, whether it's family, whether it's trauma, whether it may be, but it's choosing that very, very permanent solution when there are other solutions. They may take a bit more time. They may be more involved than just taking a Prozac prescription. Like, and actually that's one of the things we emphasize in the book. It's not just about the pill you take. It's all the elements that need to occur to move you towards wellness. It even relates to the story of healing that Rick just described. It's what's happening on the psychological side, the spiritual side, and your community side, and also in your biology that moves you towards wellness. Rick?
Yeah. And there's I'll just throw one little thing in here about agency. So God intends for us to have agency in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a shifting scale according to the level of agency you can express. When you are unconscious, for instance, you have no agency. You need someone to come along and help you. Just like the paralyzed man could not walk to get his healing from Jesus, he had 4 friends who carried him. He had diminished agency in order to get what he most needed, so he had to rely on others to help him. And we're all on that continuum somewhere. But God's intention is that we rise to the level of agency we have. To whom much has been given, much is expected. That is a formula, if you want to call it that, for agency. He's saying, if you have much, you need to exercise much because I respect the dignity of your humanness. I will not do for you what you are able to do. That's his partnership with us. But when you have very little agency on the end of that continuum, you need help. You can't just shoulder it onto the back of your shoulders and carry it up the hill anymore. It's not possible. So you need someone to come alongside and help you. So there's no diminished respect in needing help if you're at that end of the continuum of agency. The point is to get back to a place where you regain some of that agency again and become more of an active participant toward health in your life. That's the goal.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, it's been great to have you here with me today. I just want to give you an opportunity to give final thoughts, each of you. One thing that you would want our listeners to know surrounding the topic of suicide or your book. Mr. Lawrence, I'll let you go first.
Sure thing. The first thing I thought of was something we say right off the bat in the introduction to the book. I'm just going to read this right from the introduction because this is Daniel's in my heart, and this is what I believe Jesus. It's his message to anyone who's listening to this, who's struggling right now. Here's what we wrote. We want you to know at the moment you're reading these words that you are not alone. You are not alone. Hope is real, it's tangible, and it's possible. Together, guided by the Good Shepherd, we'll find a way out of the valley of shadow of death and emerge into the light again. Jesus said, I came so that you would have life and have it abundantly. And he means what he says.
That's really good. I don't even know I don't know what else to say beyond that. That's kind of really where it ends for me. Usually it's that idea of hope, that there are tools, there's help, there's people out there that want to help. There's nuanced and different ways of looking at whatever challenge or problem that you may have faced. No matter if you think no one else understands, there are people out there that can understand, and there are different perspectives. Whatever solution you've tried, try another. There are other things to do. And it's usually the combination of things that can lead, and even just the shift in perspective that can lead to the healing that you desire and you want.
Absolutely. Dr. Emina, Mr. Lawrence, we appreciate you once again being here today. Where can we find the book, The Suicide Solution?
It's available on Amazon and anywhere you buy books. So it's widely available. Just go into Amazon, search for The Suicide Solution. You'll find it easily there.
Sounds great. Well, we'll make sure to find that and attach it into the description of this podcast. Thank you for listening to Doc Talks today. Of course, we want to hear from you, so you can call us or text us at 910-777-7239. That's 910-777-7239. Also, if you or a loved one is experiencing suicidal thoughts or ideologies, you can dial 988 anywhere in the United States. That's 988. And if you are in fear of your life for someone who may have suicidal thoughts, you always call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. Thank you for listening today. Once again, Mr. Lawrence, Dr. Emina, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.